week number 2, we'll have your first Hayden McNeil lab assignment that will be due. Now, in week number 1, I provided you the link under lab assignments to go ahead and register for the Hayden McNeil lab. And so when you click on this, you go through the registration process. For week number 2, you'll see your actual first lab assignment through the Hayden McNeil lab. That's going to be lab 2, acids, bases, pH, and buffers. And so in week 2, I'll have a little block here for lab assignments that are due. And so for week 2, it's going to be lab number 2. I've got some objectives, learning objectives here. So these are the things that you're going to be learning about. You're going to be learning about pH. You're going to be learning about acids and bases and what neutral is, and how to use a pH meter and different things. And so when you're ready to begin the lab, you just click on lab 2, acids, bases, and pH. Also listed here are my instructions. And so what I've done for lab 2 is assign experiments 1 and 2. Lab 2 actually includes a few other experiments, but I'm only requiring that you do experiment 1 and 2. And then there'll be a short answer section and a multiple choice section to complete. And so when you click on that lab, you'll get a page that kind of looks like this. It looks similar to a Moodle type page. And so you'll see going down will be the labs that you'll be completing. Eventually what I'll do is open up multiple labs at a time, and that will allow you to kind of work ahead. If you're ready to go on to the next lab, you could actually work ahead and complete multiple labs during that week. There is a introduction lab that's here. And so this would be good to kind of give you a little bit of a tutorial. This is optional, it's not graded, but it would be a good idea to kind of go through, spend a little time. It kind of helps you walk through how to complete the virtual simulated labs. But here's lab 2. I want to show you a few things about this. And here is the actual lab assignment here. And then the lab experiment is here. And then the questions that you need to complete are down here. This is just a helpful tip. One thing I like to do is to, if you click here, it's going to open it up directly in this screen. What I like to do is I like to, of course I'm using a PC, I like to right click and open up that link into a new tab. That allows me to keep this page open so that I can still go to the multiple choice and the short answer while I'm working on that lab. And so I've opened up the lab into a new window here, and the first thing you'll see is some background information. And so it's a good idea to, just kind of go read over, review the information here. I try to match up the labs with the lessons, with the chapters. And so this is on, basic chemistry. And so we have in chapter 2 or week 2, we'll be going over some chemistry information. And so read over the background information. That's here. It's a little bit lengthy, but it does give you, little sections on each of the main topics. When you get to the bottom, you can click the next little button here, and that takes you to the experiment page. All right. And so here you have, again, you have the directions for the experiment. And then when you're ready to actually complete the simulation, you click on this green icon here. This is how you actually get to the lab simulation. And so I'm going to click here. This does open into a new screen, which is nice because you're going to need the directions down here for your experiments. And so you're going to need to be kind of switching back and forth between the simulation experiment screen and the direction screen here. So back here, this is your simulation screen. All you have to do is click Start Lab. It always asks you, what types of protective equipment you're going to need. Of course, if you're in a lab setting, you're required to wear goggles, lab coat, and gloves. So you click those and enter the lab. This will take you into the virtual lab. All the labs will kind of be set up like this. And just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview here, along the top row here, shelf, you see different materials that you would need. The first one is water. This is acetone, ammonia, and they're all labeled. Notice that it does have a little area here, which means there's more items if you scroll to the right. The container shelf is here, so you've got different size beakers. You've got test tubes, and again, you can scroll to the right to find other containers and things that you are measuring devices that you would need for the lab. And then on the bottom shelf are instruments. And so this particular lab is going to require the use of a pH meter to measure acid and base. So right now you don't see any directions. And so again, you have to click back to your other tab to find out what you need to do for the experiment. And so remember that I assigned experiment 1 and 2. And so let's look at experiment 1 first. Notice that there are about 9 steps to completing experiment 1. And so you just need to go through each step one by one to complete the experiment. And so I'm going to walk you through just a couple of these steps just to kind of get you started. Step 1 is to take 6 small test tubes from the containers, put them on the workbench. And so I'll show you up here, you've got small test tubes. Notice you have large test tubes, but it told me to get the small ones. And so I'm just going to drag and drop these to the counter, the bench top here, to kind of get started. It told me I wanted 6 of these. And so I've got my 6 test tubes here. And so that's step 1. That's pretty quick. Number 2, we want to label the test tubes 1 through 6 and then add a reagent according to this table here. And so we need test tubes labeled 1 through 6, and we need to add these items, these liquids, to each of those test tubes. So I'm going to click back. To label these, all you have to do is double click it. It opens up a new window. I'm just going to space over and put test tube 1 like that. You can label these however you want to, as long as you keep up with what goes where. This is test tube 2, test tube 3, test tube 4. You kind of get the idea. Test tube 5 and test tube 6. Now, it says that I want to put certain solutions and certain amounts into each test tube. And so test tube 1 is going to get 10 milliliters of water. So to do that, I have to go up, find my water, which I've kind of hidden now. I've got to scroll back over. There's the water. All I have to do to add this to the test tube, again, is click on it, drag it and drop to my test tube 1. It asked me how much, and it told me I wanted 10 milliliters. I'm going to add it, and it fills it up. All right. And then you'll repeat that for the remainder of the different solutions. Then as you go through, it says take down the pH meter, and you're going to, from the instrument shelf, and place it in the first test tube. All right, so here's my pH meter. It has a probe attached to it, so I'm going to put this in here, and you see that as soon as I drop it there, it gives me the pH of that liquid. In this case, water has a neutral pH of 7.0. Right? So that's how you're going to complete the actual experiment in the lab simulation. You go through step by step. Now, as you're going through, it's a good idea to take a look at some of the questions, because some of the questions that you're going to answer are going to be based on your results as you go through the experiment. So I want to show you the question tab. I left that open. The question tab is here. You've got a multiple choice and you've got short answer questions. And so I'm going to click on the multiple choice section here first. You can do either one. And the multiple choice, again, is going to, I started this already, but the multiple choice attempt is going to be, in this case, 14 questions, multiple choice, and it's going to ask me questions about the experiment. And so question 1, what color did the bromethymol blue indicator turn when it's added to the test tube containing citric acid? Well, I haven't got to that step yet, but as you go through experiment 1, you will eventually get to that particular step, and then when you do, you'll be able to know the answer for this question. All right, and then once you submit your answers here, hit the next page, it'll take you on to the next question. You can click on different questions through the little boxes here. If you needed to skip one and come back to, that's fine. And then whenever you're completed and you're ready to finish the attempt, you can click the finish attempt button there. Don't forget that you also need to complete the short answer questions. And so let's see, let me find back the short answer questions. If I hit the back button, I can click this screen, I think. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're back to the main screen here. The short answer questions, you click here. Now, the short answer, I have provided a file here for you to complete. If you click on this file, it's going to open up a Word document. And what you can do is to actually download this as a Word document file. Once you download it to your computer, I would suggest saving it, somewhere that where you can find it, maybe on the desktop, or create a folder on your computer with your lab documents. Download it, and then you can go through and fill this in and answer the questions for the short answer. So experiment 1, there's a table here to fill out, and then there's a few questions, or one question about experiment 1. And then experiment 2, there's a table here to put your result, and a few questions about the experiment 2. Make sure you save this again to your desktop or wherever on your computer. Save your answers here, and then when you're done, you'll go back here and you'll upload that file to this Moodle page, basically your Hayden McNeil Moodle page, and then I'll grade that. Your grades are based on completion for the lab. And so as long as you submit answers, and as long as you are basically on the right track for your answers, then you'll get full credit, and I'll add those scores directly to your Moodle Grade Center. All right, so that's just a little bit of information about getting started with the labs, and hopefully a few helpful tips. And again, if you have any questions, please send me an email. Thanks.